The oppressive silence of the night was shattered by the harsh, ragged sound of breathing. In the darkness, each breath seemed like a sinister whisper, reverberating in a mind where reality and madness intertwined in a macabre dance. She was there, at the epicenter of something incomprehensible, feeling the inevitability of what was about to happen. The days leading up to this night had been a blur, a series of disjointed events that lost all meaning as the voice began to whisper in her ears. It was a constant presence, an invisible entity that, in the quietest hours of the night, planted disturbing thoughts in her mind. It started subtly, a sense of unease as if some hidden truth was lurking, just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The first few nights were consumed by insomnia. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling as if it held answers to what she was feeling. But all she found were murmurs, words that seemed to come from nowhere, forming disjointed sentences that slowly became clearer. 3, 3, 3. The number echoed in her mind like an inescapable prophecy, marking time until the inevitable. The digital clock on her nightstand always read 3:33 a.m. when she woke up. It didn't matter what time she went to sleep or how many times she adjusted the clock. When her eyes opened, those 3 numbers awaited her, unrelenting. As the nights passed, she began to notice a pattern. Each time she awoke, the voice grew clearer, more insistent, as if it was demanding something from her. "Free them," the voice would say, a tone of urgency mixed with authority. During the day, she tried to ignore the thoughts haunting her mind, but the shadows began to follow her. At first, they were just glimpses at the edge of her vision, shapes that vanished the moment she tried to focus on them. But these apparitions became more frequent, more tangible. She started to see faces in those shadows, faces twisted in expressions of agony, eyes pleading for help, yet at the same time accusing her of something she couldn't remember. The nights turned into a living nightmare. The voice that was once a whisper now screamed inside her head, demanding blood, clamoring for redemption. She tried to resist, tried to drown out the screams with alcohol, medication, but nothing worked. The call was too strong, an invisible chain pulling her into an abyss from which she knew there would be no return. On that fateful night, the night that would mark the beginning of something irreversible, she finally gave in. The clock struck 3:33, and she rose as if in a trance. Every movement seemed guided by an external force, each step a surrender to what had become inevitable. When she reached the basement of her house, the air was thick with a dense, cold mist that seemed to emanate from within her. The blade, a kitchen knife that gleamed in her hand like an extension of her will, pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The shadows that once haunted her now gathered around, watching silently. The faces in the shadows no longer accused her. Now, they encouraged her, their expressions twisting into disturbing smiles. The first cut was quick and shallow, almost a test. She watched the blood trickle down pale skin, a red thread that soon turned into a river. The sight of the blood mesmerized her, and the sensation of the blade slicing through flesh brought a strange euphoria, as if she were finally doing something right, something she had been waiting her entire life to do. As the violence intensified, the reality around her began to distort. The walls of the basement started to pulse, as if alive, absorbing the energy emanating from each strike. The shadows around her grew denser, more defined, almost tangible. They watched each movement with morbid attention, as if drinking in the pain and despair that filled the room. She began to see flashes of memories, lives that weren't her own but were somehow connected to her. Moments of happiness, love, loss, and betrayal flashed through her mind like scenes from an old movie. And in each of those memories, there was blood, violence, and the suffocating sense of inevitability. Were they memories of past lives, or perhaps of futures not yet lived, all converging on this moment? Finally, with the last strike, silence returned, but not the same silence that once filled the night. This was an absolute silence, crushing, as if the world had been wrapped in a curtain of darkness that erased any trace of life. She was alone in the midst of her creation, surrounded by lifeless bodies that once held dreams, hopes, and fears. The voice, now stronger than ever, murmured one final instruction: "The sacrifice is made, but the cycle is far from over." She knew, with terrifying certainty, that what had begun that night was not the end, but the beginning of something much larger, something that would consume her entirely. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the dusty windows, she left the basement, feeling the weight of what she had done, but also a strange lightness, as if she had finally fulfilled her destiny. The massacre wasn't an end, but a prelude to what was to come, something that would not only change her life but the fate of everyone around her. She had become the bearer of shadows, the conductor of a darkness that was now free to spread.